In this video, I will walk you through the steps you need to take to convert a Photoshop document into a web page. If you don't have access to Photoshop, please let me know so that we can arrange some time that you can come in for lab and do this exercise, or perhaps we need to make separate arrangements for you in order to complete this assignment. First, I'm going to download one of the PSD files. I'll be downloading the first one, which is called Web Design Layout 001. A preview is available on the website. I'll right click and save the link. I'm going to save this in my Web Design 2 server. I'm going to take this opportunity to create a new folder, call it Assignment 9, and start by saving this file here. Once the file has downloaded, I open it up in Photoshop. You can see this one has several rules on top of it. This was designed with a website in mind. At this point, we can get some basic information about the site. I will click on Image and find out what the image size is. This is 780 by 616. I'll start taking notes using Notepad. You can do this using Notepad yourself or writing it down. And my first value to save would be 780 pixels wide. I'll close the information in Photoshop. Next, I can find out some values from this Photoshop document. I will get rid of some of these windows so that I can see my layers on the side. The next thing I want to know is how tall this header is. We have a nice header. It says Web Design. It's got a nice blue background. We will be using it in our design. It's got a navigation bar with a gray background. We've got the main body, and we have space down here for a footer. I will right click on the image and find the banner background, banner BG. I see the layer thumbnail on my layer list. I'm pressing Control, I'm using a PC, and my marquee appears on top of the banner background. I need to click on the icon on the layer. By clicking that, it makes a selection of the Web Design banner. I can now open up a window that will give me information about this. Mine is already set to pixels. You can click on this, what's called the hamburger icon, and check your panel options. And you can change from pixels to inches, etc. Yours may be at inches, but you want to see pixels so that we can get definite measurements for our website. So this banner is 780 pixels wide. We already knew that, but it's 173 pixels tall. I'll make these notes. Our header is 780 pixels by 173 pixels. Next, I'm right clicking on my Photoshop image and finding my navigation background. It's over here in this layer. I'm pressing Control again, and with the marquee clicking, I now have new information. This is still 780 pixels wide and 41 pixels tall. I'll write this down. 780 pixels by 41 pixels. Our body will fluctuate just like it would on any other page, so I'm not going to measure this. I'm going to assume that it's already 780 pixels wide. However, I can get the information for footer. Clicking on footer background, pressing Control and clicking on the icon, I see that this is 780 pixels by 42. So now I have most of my information. The next thing I need to do is to start to cut some of these elements into their own files so that we can use them in our website. Let's start with the banner. I will once again hold the Control key and click on banner background, except this time I will make the banner background layer active by clicking on it. I will now go to Edit and Copy. I could also press Control C. And then I will create a new file, File, New. The background contents for my new Photoshop image are transparent, and you should keep them at transparent since later on we will be creating some transparent files. I'm going to click OK. I now have the space for a new transparent image. You can tell it's transparent by the checkerboard background. Since I already copied the image that I want to use, I'll simply go to edit and paste. I could also press Ctrl V. And here is the background image. I only have one layer, however you may have two if you did not select a transparent layer or had something else in your document. But don't worry too much about that, since we're going to be saving for web. I'm going to go into the File menu and Save for Web. This basically only gives you 2 or 3 options. You can save as a JPEG, as a PNG, as a portable network graphic, or as a GIF. There is also a WBMP option, but we will not be using this at all. What I want to use right now is a JPEG. I want to keep the quality at about 30, that's fine. This graphic is only 4K in size, so it will not take too long to load. Even on a 56.6K modem, it would only take 2 seconds. I can't see the save button on my window, however I know that by pressing enter, I can save the file. I'm already in assignment 9 folder. I'm going to save this as banner background. I'll call it banner_bg. It's already a JPEG file. I don't need to specify. I will only click save. I'll return to my original file, and the next thing I want to get is going to be the navigation bar. Going to navigation background. I will select the area by pressing Ctrl and clicking on the thumbnail in the nav background layer, and then I will copy this information. Edit, copy, or Ctrl C. Create a new file, File New, and paste it into this new document by clicking OK and paste. Edit, paste. Here's my new background. I'm going to save this for web as well. We will keep the JPEG at 30 quality. I'll press return to accept. I will save this as nav background, nav_bg. The reason why we are saving for web is that these files are optimized for the web, that is, that they are smaller in size, therefore they will load quicker on the internet. I'm just closing a couple of the files, so I don't need them open anymore. I'm going to copy the footer background next, footer BG. I will press Ctrl and select the background image on footer BG and copy this as well. I'm creating a new file, accepting the values, pressing Ctrl V or edit paste to paste. I have my background here. I'm going to save for web once again. Pressing enter to accept. This will be called footer BG. I'm closing this, not saving it since I've already saved it for web. And the original information is always available on the original file. I'm going to copy a couple of extra things. I will be creating the navigation text inside of the web design, inside of Dreamweaver. However, this web design font and the syllabus font are specialty fonts. I could go and install special fonts for this website. However, since this is already designed, I will right click on the image, find the words web design. I see that there's a text layer already built and it's called web design. Doing the same thing, pressing Control, getting the marquee on top of the T in the web design layer, I will click. It's highlighting the web design font. I'm already active in the web design layer. I will now copy this, edit, copy, and create a new file. Make sure that this one is transparent for sure, because this will need to be a transparent file. I will click OK, and I will then paste what I just copied. I don't know if you can tell, you can barely see the web design is still here. I could press Control and select it, and now you can see this a little bit better. The web design font has been copied. There's a couple of ways you can save this as a transparent file. The easier way would be to go to File and Save for Web. And let's pick, rather than JPEG, a PNG24. PNG24 has more information than 8, but these files are so small, this one is not even 5K, that it doesn't really matter which one we use. Make sure that your transparency box is checked here. I will now press return to accept this. I will save this as web design text and save. This is a PNG file. I'll close. I won't save since I just saved it as a PNG. I'm going to next right click on the word syllabus, find syllabus. Now this is not just the syllabus area here, it's also all of this dummy text right here. I only want to copy syllabus. The remaining text will be built in a different fashion. So one thing that I can do for sure is to right click and go to the syllabus layer. So one thing that I can do is, now that the syllabus layer is selected, is right click on it, ask Photoshop to rasterize the type. This basically turns all your text into a graphic. Make sure that the syllabus layer is active. You can see the different color here. I will use the marquee tool to select this word, syllabus. Everything else around it is transparent. So when I copy, I'll go to edit copy and create a new file. I've only copied the text that is within the letters. So when I paste it, edit paste, I only get the word syllabus. Next I will save this as a PNG, save for web. PNG is already selected. I'll press return to accept, and I will call this syllabus underscore text as a PNG file. I will close files that I don't need now. And I think that we've copied every graphic element that we're going to get from this original Photoshop file. I'll keep it open while we're designing the website. Next I go to Dreamweaver and refresh my files. Here's assignment 9. Here's all the files that I just created. One thing that I can do to keep things here a little bit tidier is to right click on assignment 9 and create a new folder. I will call this images. And next I will click on banner, just click once, press Ctrl to select footer, press Ctrl to select nav background, syllabus text, and web design text.png. I can now drag all of these files into the images folder, just so that they're all in the same place. I can minimize this, and this way I will have a little bit more space to work with. I'll keep the Photoshop document here for a while, but we won't need it once we start our design. Next I'll click on assignment 9 folder, ask up to create a new file, file, new, make sure it's HTML5, create. I'll call this web design on the title, and I will bring up some of the numbers that I had jotted down. I'll keep this on top so that I won't have to be playing with it. That's what I need. Put it out of the way. I'm going to collapse the files folder. I'll need the CSS designer open. We're going to be doing a lot of CSS coding, and one of the first things I want to do is to create a CSS file. However, before I do that, I need to save this file, save, inside of assignment 9. I'll call this index. Dreamweaver adds the extension for us, so I just click index and press return. Next I will create that CSS file. I'll click on plus next to sources, create a new CSS file. I'll just call this styles and click OK. So now I have my source code and my styles.css ready to go. But since this is such a simple design, I'll just keep it open on design. For selector, I want to add in my styles.css is going to be body. Since we know that the entire document is 780 pixels wide, I can declare that width at 780 pixels. Click on pixels, 780px, and we know that the file is going to be floating along the middle. So I will choose margin and change the values on either side to auto. Anything inside the body will be floating along the middle. Now we begin to build the rest of the page. Our header comes first. I already have my insert menu open, so I will find the header, click on that selection, and create an ID of page header, and press OK. This will be followed by a navigation bar that will be inserted after the header tag. I'll call this nav page. Next we will have a section. I'll call this page content. Next we will be adding a section. that will be inserted after the tag navig. That will be inserted after the navigation tag. This will have an ID of page content, but we do need to create an ID for it anyway. Lastly, I will create a footer. I will tag this before the end of a tag. That will be the body tag, and the ID will be page footer. So now we have our basic CSS done. I'm going to save this file just for safety. And now I'll begin to create the CSS. I will click on page header to make sure it's selected, click on styles and add a new selector. The new selector is page header. I'll press return to accept. I'm going to change the width to 780 pixels. Click on pixels, add 780. And make sure that you float this content to the left. I'm going to find the background, and in my background image, find the URL, clicking on the URL, opening up the folder, and in our images folder I have a banner BG JPEG. I'll select this to open, double click, and you will see the beginning of the graphic. Just remember the header is 173 pixels tall, so let's go back into our layout and assign it a height of 173 pixels. Once you add that, the background is visible. I will now select the content for ID goes here, text, and delete that. Next we have the navigation. The navigation is 780 by 41. Let's first add the selector. Here's our nav page. I will press enter to accept. Our width will be 780 pixels. Our height will eventually be 41 pixels. So let's bring that in on background URL, and browse the folder. It's our navigation background. I don't see it right away, and it may be that I need to go back to my layout and make sure that this is floating to the left. I'll click on float left, and there it is. Content for ID nav page goes here. I can get rid of that text now by just selecting it and deleting it. Page content is next. If I remember correctly, and I can always go back to the Photoshop file, this is all white in the background, and we will have some dummy text in here. I didn't measure what space we have from the left into the text. We can measure it really quick by selecting the marquee and just drawing a small square here, and it looks like it's going to be about 20 pixels that stand between the edge of the page and the beginning of the text, and I will make the assumption that we want the same for the right side. So I will add something to my notes here just to say that page content is 20 pixels from the left. I'll just say 20 pixels left and right just for my own notes. And the background is white, but we'll worry about that in a little bit. So page content, let's create a new selector for that. Page content. I will give it a width of 780 pixels. I won't worry about the height, that will be determined by the content. I know that we need to float this to the left, that we need a white background color. I'll select white, press return to accept, and while I'm here in my layout, I will also apply the 20 pixel padding on either side. I'll just type 20 here and 20 here. One thing to take into account, and I just saw my mistake here, is that 20 plus 20 is 40, plus 780 is more than we need. And you can see here on the right side that our page content division is sticking out. Not necessarily what we want. I will now decrease the width by 40 points to make sure that the padding has somewhere to go. So we'll make this 740 pixels instead of 780. I'll leave the dummy text in page content there for now. Let's do the page footer next. I'm on page footer, clicking on selector to add, plus, change the width to 780 pixels. Our height will be 42 pixels, and we have a background we already saved. Check the URL, the folder, and here is our footer background. I will click to accept. And for the most part, the colors and backgrounds on our page are set. I'll put these notes out of the way. I'll come back to them if I need them. Let's start working on the content. First of all, our Photoshop file has a web design tag on top that we already saved. I'll make sure that I am inside of the page header. I'm in header, page header. And from the insert menu, I will insert an image. We already saved web design text.png. I'll select that and click OK to accept. And here's our big web design tag. We can go back to Photoshop and see where this is, or we can just start guessing. I'm guessing that this is, rather than this being 20 pixels, it's at about 10 pixels from the left, maybe less. And from the top, it looks like it's about 140 pixels. So keeping that information in mind, I'll go back to Dreamweaver, make sure that my web design banner is selected. I will add a selector, which will be the image inside of page header. And I will give it a relative position. My position will now be relative. And we set from the left maybe 10 pixels. And from the top about 140. We may not see this right away in Dreamweaver. It's one of the bugs that it has. So I'm clicking in between split and design. And I see now that this may be a little bit too much from the top. So let's change this to maybe just 100. And that looks a little bit better. With that done, let's go on to the navigation bar. The navigation bar has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 words: home, assignments, students, syllabus, and eCampus. In Dreamweaver, I will start to type these inside of the nav page division. So we said home, assignments, students, syllabus, and eCampus. And yes, all of these look out of whack. However, we now select all of these words, make an unordered list. That's this tag right here. I will switch into the split mode so that I can see some of these codes. I want to find the li element, the list element, and add a selector. Clicking on plus, now we have our nav page ul li. Press enter to accept. We're going to go to the very bottom of this and change my list style type from undefined to none. That gets rid of the bullets. And then change my display and the layout to inline. Select on that inline, which is grayed out, to an inline that's actually active. And that lays out the whole text that we selected horizontally. These are going to be links in the end, so I will add some fake links to this. I will highlight home, give it a hashtag link, highlight assignments, do the same, and then do the same for the rest of it. If I remember correctly, this text will all be white. So let's add a link element to our selectors. Click on plus. We now have the link element here, that's the A. I will press enter to accept. In my text, I'll change the color to white. Press return to accept that, and then make sure that there's no text decoration so that we don't have the underline in between. Something else that we can do is give these words a little bit of space, so I will go back into layout, and while I'm changing properties for the selector, I will add a margin to the right of maybe 20 pixels. And that spreads out the words. Also, while we have the link selected, we can change the style of the type. I will click on text. I will change the font family to something closer to what we used on the other side. And if you're using Dreamweaver CC, you may not see this Verdana Arial Sans Serif. Instead, you will see a whole bunch of fonts you may have never heard about. One way to get back fonts that you've used before, for example, here I don't have Times New Roman anywhere, and you may not have it either. I will click on Manage Fonts and create a custom font stack. In order to get the Arial, Verdana, etc., or if you want Times New Roman, etc., I could just look for the fonts that I want in my stack, and there are plenty of them. However, I know what they're called. There's Times New Roman. I would find that by typing it, selecting it. I could also say something else like maybe Georgia and selecting it. And finally, since these are fonts that have feet, they would be serif fonts. And I have a font in my computer that's called serif, so that confuses the subject here. However, the other option is sans serif, which is S-A-N-S. It's not the font that you want with Times New Roman. However, sans serif is right next to serif. If you just go down a little bit, I would click on serif and select it. I have now created a stack with Times New Roman, Georgia, and serif. This tells the browser that you want your page to display Times New Roman. If that is not available, to go back to Georgia, and if that is not available, then use any serif font that the computer has. I will click on done, and I will keep on changing my font family. And now you see I have a Times New Roman, Georgia, and serif stack of fonts. However, I will be using Verdana, Arials, and sans serif for this. That changes my font. I can now change the white and make it bold. I can change the font size and make it large. And most importantly, I can change the line height to 0%. And that centers it a little bit along the navigation bar. Next, I have the content for ID. I'm going to select that. And in its place, I will insert an image. This one is going to be the syllabus text. I will click on that. And there it is. It didn't erase the dummy text, but we can delete that fairly quick. After syllabus, I'll press enter. And you could type the story of your life here if you want. However, there are websites that can help you with this process. I'm going to click on a new tab and go to a website called loremipsum.com, which is actually Lipsum, Lipsum.com. This will generate dummy text. Our original file only has 3 paragraphs of text, so in this website I can just ask it to give me 3 paragraphs, generate, and now I have dummy text to play with. I'll select this text and copy it, edit copy or Control C, and in Dreamweaver paste this text. I'm going to see just the design to see what I'm doing. This is using Times New Roman. I'll select this text. However, I see that there is a problem with my file, and if you follow my instructions you may have the same problem. I will split the design view, and I think what the problem is that the footer at the very bottom, if I go back and check out its properties, may not be floating to the left. So let's double check that, and indeed it is not floating to the left. I have it floating to the left now. I'll go back to my design view, and now I see my entire page. I'll click on the text and make sure that my format is a paragraph, and it is. Once that is set, I will add a new selector. Make sure that it's my page content P, my paragraph, and then I can change my text, font family, and I want to use Verdana as well here. I'll keep it at this size. I think that looks good enough. And the main body is built. All I have left now is the page footer. I will click on it, add a new selector, page footer. The original file didn't have any content here, so I'm just going to assume that this is going to be copyright. I will type copyright 2014, put my name. I will select the text, add a new selector, press return or enter to accept. I will change the font family to Verdana as well. I'll make this a little bit smaller as well. Font size, small. And align it to the center. Somewhere in here I need a copyright symbol. I'm going to insert a character, which will be the copyright. And to make sure that this is displayed correctly, I will change the format from none to a paragraph. That just adds the p tags next to each on either side of the text, so now it flows a little better. And with that, we have recreated a web page that was originally created as a Photoshop file, but is now an HTML file in Dreamweaver. At the time of production of this video, I was unable to upload the file into my server. However, I can see a preview by clicking on this button, preview in my browser. I'll save my changes to all files, and here's my web design. The only thing that I might do to this in Dreamweaver is to go back in my styles, find my body, and give it a background color of maybe a dark gray, somewhere around here. Press return to accept, and let me see what this looks like now. Preview in Google Chrome, save it, and there it is. This would also be a good time to link it to your index page. I will bring back my main index, double click on that, add assignment 9, and link it to the page I just created. And we're set.